Good morning.
Recording in
May I
progress.
request all the distinguished delegates to take seats? We are going to start the session soon. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I am Mohammad Mizanur Rahman, the Charge Affairs at Bangladesh Embassy to the United Arab Emirates. I have been invited by the Chair of the Council, Zimbabwe, to chair this morning's deliberations in my capacity as Vice Chair of the Council. I declare open of the day of I declare open the second day of the 28th meeting of the Council of the International Renewable Energy Agency. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I invite the Council to turn to the agenda item 6, mobilization of finance towards renewables, competitive advantage of ETAF business model. In preparation of the discussion under this item, a background note with the same title set out in document C/28/BN/2 has been circulated. I now invite the Director General to introduce the topic. Director General, you have the floor now.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, it is an honor to welcome you all to this session where we will discuss on ARENA's approaches to support members in raising capital for deploying renewable energy projects. When I joined the agency, one of the missions that was given to me, on which I gladly took on, was to support the membership of ARENA to deliver action on identifying sources of financing and providing technical assistance for the implementation of renewable energy projects in our members' countries. The first step in raising our ambition was receiving our member approval to set up the Project Facilitation and Support Division. Since 2020, the division has spearheaded our activities in mobilizing funding and connecting investments to eligible projects in our members' countries. Since 2020, the agency has scaled up its support for members' energy transition interventions to mobilize partnerships that deliver capital and risk mitigation instruments for energy transition projects. In parallel, through the Climate Investment Platform, and the Energy Transition Accelerating Financing Platform, the ETAF, the agency actually engages with public and private sector developers to make financing opportunities accessible and also provide capacity building and technical advice. Our work aims to provide attractive project pipelines that are matched to the available financing opportunities. Therefore, this helps our members in understanding what multi-development banks, funds, and philanthropies ask for in a project. And we then translate those requirements into the project to be proposed to take advantage of what is available. Council members, the CAP and ETAF platform gives us a vehicle for tripping renewables for our members in 3 ways. First, tripling renewables requires active and action-oriented partnerships. We must intentionally accelerate the momentum of our actions towards stronger partnership to deliver consistency in policy and financing that address the urgency of tripling renewable energy deployment across our members. Now, a question is legit. How does ARENA accommodate projects that don't offer the high returns banks typically expect? Most of these non-commercial projects come from government. To facilitate the deployment of these projects, we have expanded our partnership and strengthened the involvement of relevant and key partners like the Inter-American Development Bank, Abu Dhabi Fund for Development, and the OPEC Fund, who provide sovereign lending with concessional terms. This project do not need to be commercially viable, although some partners may still require a sovereign guarantee. Secondly, ETAF enables the tripling of renewable through support to project development and deployment. Project development barriers hinder the ambition to deploy renewable energy and achieve our targets. For example, there are more than 400 projects on CAP, plus under 120 on ETAF that are in their development phases, representing more than 70 gigawatts in capacity that could benefit more than 200 million people if delivered. We are working with our funding partners and mobilizing voluntary contributions from members to support the development phases of eligible projects. Thirdly, CAP and ETAF facilitate financing for tripling renewables. We exceeded our initial ambition of mobilizing partners to commit $1 billion. Currently, we have commitment in the form of soft pledge for $415 billion via ETAF, and we are well on our way to achieving our new target of $5 billion. Through this effort, CAP and ETAF are enabling the agency to showcase approaches to increase access to financing for renewable energy project deployment. So, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, let me close with a clear message that I think needs to be kept in mind when we all work together in accelerating any transition globally. The attractiveness of projects for financing requires removing policy and regulatory barriers and creating an enabling environment for the project's capital inflows. I therefore urge the extended ARENA membership that all of you represent to support these efforts and share your country's priority projects in renewable energy generation, interconnection, energy access, storage, and electric mobility with ARENA via CAP and ETAF. I also wish to thank the partners of CAP and ETAF, as well as ARENA members that are supporting our technical assistance and capacity building intervention. Thank you, Chair. Back to you. Sorry, Chair. So with your permission, I may turn to Ahmed Badr. Go ahead.
Thank you, DG. Ladies and gentlemen, excellencies, distinguished guests, thank you very much to give us as IRENA the opportunity to reflect on the business model for how the project facilitation aligned with the mandate helping the countries achieving their NDC targets. Also, I would like to thank the BSCC members, specifically UEE, because they raised these questions and he realized that it's very important to share with all council members all the business model details to see how we are doing this. So I'm going to talk about specifically 5 points. First, what is project facilitation and support tools are. Connecting that with the second point, which basically when IRENA started, one of the genuine tools at that time, back in 2008, 2009, was the launching of IRENA EDFD facility, which again, I repeat, it was very genuine at that time. And by the time it was scaled up to the CIP and ETAF and BFS division, upon the needs and the scale up and the gap that widened every year after the other for the closed, and that need to be closed for the Paris Agreement targets. And then we would like to end up by what is the progress, what is the impact, and what are the countries' needs for this. Was giving an example about what we have heard from the 7 upper countries last week in Kenya. So, as outlined and hinted by our Director General in his introductory remarks, the issue of project facilitation and support is not about division. It's about putting the final mile for closing the gap in order to have the countries achieving their NDCs by doing financial closure. I repeat again, it's financial closure. Why I'm saying that? Because development banks and more importantly, private sector, foreign direct investors and commercial banks, they don't want to go for any project that needs a lot of efforts to become bankable. And that's exactly the main point that every country that we hear, not only in Africa, but also in Latin America, in small and developing states through the tool of investment forum, that basically countries saying we need help on this, and they are asking for more financial resources for their project development, as well as what we call it bankability element analysis. What is bankability element analysis? This is basically what are the studies and the regulatory framework that need to be established at country level in order to attract investments, whether from private or public, from the all interested financier, and here financier again, private or public. So basically the 3 elements for project facilitation and support division that was created when DG took office, as basically his main legacy on this is basically to provide needed technical assistance for countries, as well as private sector, as long as it is approved by the host country for this private sector to request the support of IRENA in order to scale up renewable energy projects and hence the basically work on their NDC targets. The issue of project facilitation is different than accelerating up the readiness. Facilitating the project or facilitating the implementation of the project, meaning that bring the project into meaningful definition. It's not about anyone has an idea, and I mean anyone, any government or any private sector has an idea, has to come to be said, then it's becoming a project. No, there is a lot of issues that basically any foreign direct investors or the governments has to look at and consider. So the facilitation when we started with the climate investment platform was basically to help any interlocutor, whether private or public sector, is to come up with a meaningful concept. And then based on this, and how we do that, we help those who are interested, whether public or private, to put that in a very defining, meaningful definition. And then we accelerate that by putting several partners, as well explain the following slides, in order to put the financing as we have more than at least 22 financing model along climate finance and renewable energy. So to start with, let's see basically what is the genuine elements as was approved by General Assembly by third-party consultants who hired and put this and was approved by General Assembly back in 2020. So that's exactly the process that EDFD Arena Facility has put at that time. As you see the process, basically, or the start with United Arab Emirates through Abu Dhabi Fund for Development have pledged it in a soft pledge like the same time of ETAF, the same pledge, meaning that soft pledge that EDFD does not provide cash in the bank account of Arena. Absolutely not. It's not the mandate. But they keep the money physically in their bank account, and any project that meets their eligibility criteria and their due diligence, then they take it further for their assessment, and then they consider if the project will go or not. That's exactly the case. And they defined specifically that the ticket size of the project has to be between 5 to 15 million and maximum up to basically 50% of the project financing. Whichever near, it comes to it. Plus, these projects has to follow one specific important element. I would like to stress it because it will have a reflect on the assessment that done afterwards. That any project has to come from private sector or public sector is there. But for public sector or private sector, they have to come with what we call it sovereign guarantee. So the government that hosting the project physically, they have to provide such a kind of sovereign guarantee. That's exactly the criteria. There is one criteria I didn't put here, but it's very important to highlight that EDFD provided a concessional funding, and it varies the percent between 1% to 1.5. That's really very generous from Abu Dhabi Fund for Development and for UAE government, thanks to the UAE government and to EDFD. But one, I didn't put it because it varies. It depends on the several environmental and socioeconomic elements, as we can see. But on the other hand, we have to understand that the system in place at that time, that there must be a project application and a call for projects that took about 7 months, as you can see, for project to be ready for subsequent due diligence is not ready for funding. That is the issue that I would like to highlight. So we have to keep in mind the issue of timeline, and the need for speeding up to meet 2030 agenda. I mean, speeding up for the countries to meet their energy transition targets. So 7 months is in order to say the project is ready for subsequent due diligence. Due diligence is not at the control of IRENA. It's control to the financing partner, which EDFD, on when they will complete their due diligence satisfactorily to them. Satisfactorily, this is something I can say as an ex-banker. That's exactly the issue. You cannot tell because it's really about the other point to the right-hand side, which is this is how the level of effort and how many personnel was involved. So as I mentioned during the BSSC committee the day before yesterday, that in average, 60% of professional staff have been involved for each cycle, for about 80 to 90% of their time, including 4 to 5 persons from IRENA, as well as 4 to 5 persons from EDFD. And the level of effort is split between 40% between technical visibility analysis and environmental and socioeconomic analysis, meaning they don't do the technical visibility or socioeconomic, but they read and to analyze, and they give recommendation to another committee, and another committee gave it to, after that, to EDFD for their due diligence. Economic visibility alone takes about 30%, and the other 30% for all what we call it regulatory measures and financial and social measures that need to be placed based on policy and the executive regulation level. It's very important to highlight this point because this will connect us with these are the key 5 lessons recommended in the final evaluation report done by third party and was passed through 2 executive committees and General Assembly back in 2020 and 2019. And it's very important because these 5 elements, why I'm highlighting this, because these are the one that was guided by our anchor partner and our founding partner, EDFD, when we worked together with UAE represented by EDFD to prepare for ETAF. So we have to import, I will start with point number 4, the timeline. substantial workload, and let me read by the panel experts in a, I would say, in a short period. Short period here, 7 months to prepare for about 5 projects or 4 projects to be given to them. 4 projects. Let's look at the numbers very well, because numbers are very important to feel where is the effectiveness and the efficiency of what to do. The second important issue is that basically the inclusiveness, basically providing private sector. The key lessons recommended from the third-party evaluation firm is that most of the very good projects came from private sector was rejected because they failed to receive government guarantee from their respective governments. The third issue is to put more funding partners, because EDFD offered one financing mechanism, which is concessional funding based on sovereign guarantee. So while actually at that time, back in 2020, there was about 20 models or financing mechanism. Today we are reaching 27. And I will speak about this when we come to ETAF. Very importantly also to highlight that there must be alternative and co-blending arrangement, which is not a financing model. Co-blending is look for other partners. And finally, to go for what to call it, curated technical assistance, or in another language, fit for purpose technical assistance. I have to say for these projects, that's not bankable, because bankable project goes direct to banks, doesn't come to IRENA. These always call upon the expertise of other divisions of IRENA. And here I would like to give all credit to all IRENA knowledge work led by other division, country engagement, policy, and technology, because this is exactly one of the very stumbling blocks that is one of the genuine competitive, not comparative. Competitive meaning we stand out alone globally to this kind of technical assistance. The process basically for IRENA knowledge that was done over the past decade by all IRENA divisions. So what was the impact? Just to realize what is the impact of basically projects that was funded to this moment, because until this moment we are the custodian and we're taking care of the impact, because not all projects recommended by the last panels of EDFD IRENA facility have been considered for financing to this moment. Still projects under due diligence. And I would like to stress this fact. Again, due diligence does not mean project going to financial closure. No, it means that the bank is looking at it. The bank doesn't say yes or no, this meaning there is a lot of effort and work need to be done. So as we can see here in a very nutshell, that the biggest portion of project went to solar, and the impact could be expressed in 2 things. Number 1, about 600,000 tons of CO2 equivalent in emission reduction has happened, as well as about almost 2,000 of what we call socioeconomic interventions and entrepreneurial activities that was joined or basically benefited from the EDFD IRENA facility and basically from UEE funding through Abu Dhabi Fund for Development. That's very important to highlight this, because at that time and still to be very beautiful and uniquely there, because without concessional funding from UEE represented by Abu Dhabi Fund for Development, this project would never come into bankability and getting due diligence. Now, based on these lessons, again, in partnership with Abu Dhabi Fund for Development, we created ETAF, the first 2 founding partner was basically, again, UEE represented by EDFD and IRENA. Now we are reaching 14. We hope by coming January, we add additional 2 and we close there. The remaining 2 that's coming in the future, basically is USA represented by DFC. We are working with their teams as well as UNDP through UNCDF. But look at these 14 partners. You see that we are working on several fronts. Number 1, all those partners, they brought to the platform the 27 climate finance business models and financing models. So we widened the financial model to attract all type of financing model. What I mean by that in very simple language, instead of doing concessional funding, no, we do export credit, we do co-blended finance through bridge finance, we do also guarantee to guarantee, or what we call it de-risking guarantees. We also do climate finance, carbon credit de-risking. So we do a lot of financial models. As for sure, we also include competitive and commercial funding, because not all projects that come to us need concessional funding. we have to go for correlated technical bankability analysis. That's really the issue. But to look at what is the impact now and what we do, I have to say also that basically the team, instead of 60, represented by 80% or 90%, meaning in full time, at least about half of these numbers, now we scaled up for a team of 5 persons of IRENA, dedicated, and I would say all of them having a very strong banking language, young, gender balanced, but at the same time, they are coming with very important element that they are dedicating to act as managers, not like bankers, meaning that we don't do due diligence, but in a simple way, we do help the countries to provide bankability documentation for the subsequent due diligence by banks. And we do that 7 months. It never happened that we do that in 7 months. No, we do that maximum by all means within 3 months. Actually, one of the achieved closed the project was Masdar, which also another important partner representing UAE. It happened in 2 months. The third and important element is that when we started the ETAF facility, it was launched during COP27, 8th of November in Sharm el-Sheikh, and basically reaching the maximum number that until this moment by the time of COP28 in Dubai here last year, when we had all those partners. Another important element that if you look at how many projects and what is the impact we receive today to this moment, you will find that basically we financially closed almost 1,000 megawatt or 1 gigawatt. And as usual, when we started, I have to highlight very important issue. The snowball effect was, as usual, created by our anchor partner, which is Abu Dhabi Fund for Development, representing UAE. And then another partners came on board from UAE that would create the snowball effect to attract other, starting with Masdar and Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank. Then Emirates Development Bank and all other big partners like MEGA, World Bank, EBRD, and HSBC, and all other they came in. Also, one of the very important partners is OPEC Fund, who provided us with technical assistance, which helped us to transform, as I will present later, some non-bankable project to become into bankability readiness for subsequent funding. This is a process that we do. The process here, as you can see, very importantly, is that it's very agile but very comprehensive. In achievement and in realizing and responding to the countries, we had to consider what we call it technical assistance, which is very important. And at the same time, we need to strike the balance between two important elements. Our countries at the top of the request to do these projects and to this facility, but at the same time, we need to concern about the demand and the specific requirement of the funding partners. And that's why we had to work in what we call it dual tandem way. So the two wheels has to move together in a harmonized way. This is the meaning of dual tandem, which is engineering, transportation, land terminology, between the funding needs or the funding interest of the partners as a financial institution, but before that, looking for the countries and what do they need. In a nutshell, I don't want to go for this, that the de-risking is becoming a very important element over the past 4 years, and that's why you had to focus into this, and we include it. And the second issue, the structure this time of ETAF to this moment is very simple and easy, and until this moment, we didn't have any kind of physical meeting, but basically work online, capitalizing on the technology and the lessons learned from the COVID-19 time. So it's basically a forum of partners that basically they go and meet for in the strategic decision, and executive committees that afterwards take these decisions in order to executive level that we handle that through the secretariat, which is IRENA. I would like to highlight very important element, the agility and the leniency for providing the project coming into bankability for subsequent agile due diligence by banks. At this moment, very important to highlight also that if you can see here that basically the private sector is taking the major part, so bringing back the graph into normal, that private sector has to take the lead in providing projects and to support the project, and all achieved the results until this moment. All of them, they are coming from private sector, meaning we basically the recommendation of IRENA under WITO is absolutely correct. But more importantly, if you look at the other important issue, that the funding request we received in terms of projects is basically achieved by more than double what had been achieved in 7 years by any EDFD facility. Thanks to EDFD and to Masdar and the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank and Swiss Re, who are the founding partner with us, based on the anchor starting point with the soft pledge of 400 from UAE government on that front. If you go for climate investment platform, again, climate investment platform is not to prepare project from bankability, but we help the countries to put the project in a meaningful definition. So we facilitate investment. It's very important to highlight that, because when we started that with our partners, which is UNDP, Sustainable Energy for All, in collaboration with Green Climate Fund. I have to highlight, as I mentioned yesterday, that Green Climate Fund actually is having their own very strict business model. So they have to qualify a specific number of banks, but we still found that there is a window of opportunity. If there is any project that they facilitate, they are interested in, why not? Let's work together into this. And the team here of 4 to 5 persons, which together with the other team that's representing all BFS, as I presented in terms of number yesterday, that's typically all BFS as division. But the more important part here is that whatever any window of opportunity come from any partners, including Green Climate Fund, giving their unique mandate to this, we do, and we facilitate providing a meaningful intervention for banks to come and to provide their funding. The 70 or 75 banks, for me, representing together Green Climate Fund, because none of these banks could access financing unless they become under the complete rules of GCF. We had only one project in Latin America that we had to work on over the past 4 years, and we didn't reach financial closure. But that's not our business model. I just, for the sake of transparency, we refer to this here. That's why we are basically saying in collaboration with the Green Climate Fund. The very important issue is that CIB and ETAF are both demand-driven. Why is that? Because actually IRENA EFD is also demand-driven, but it was limited by what we call it project call. But if you open the project call and you continue on outreach as recommended by the lessons learned third-party consultant, we are open at any time to bring the projects, and through the investment forum, we push with regional focus and subsequent country focus the countries to bring a project, and we immediately act on, as I explained before, under ETAF. The key issue here that I would like to highlight is that the business model of CIB is very simple, very easy, and does not take from any interested partner, whether government or private sector, to become a CIB partner, unless it could happen in 2 days, nothing more than this. And the key output for this CIP is what we call it PID, or Project Information Document, which is a meaningful document. It sizes between 20 to 40, up to the background relevant information that we put it. With the aim is that if the project reaching all bankability element analysis, we either take it to ETAF to reach financial closure, or we give it to any interested partner, specifically from foreign direct investors, to bring it to also financial closure. But also we do that through our technical assistance or qualitative technical assistance. The private sector, as you can see, still here, still presenting the major part of it, of the support that we do. And basically, as you can see, also number of mobilized funding is really reaching more than 65%. To this moment, we achieved about 5 projects in 5 different countries. 40% of this funding was provided to private sector. It's very important to highlight the impact, and we still continue on this. What is the impact? In order to see what did we do in the 2 years after launching ETAF and almost 3 years after operationalizing in full capacity CIP. I think you have seen this slide yesterday. It's very important to put that again to see the numbers. Again, 250 megawatt in projects for basically for water facility have been supported. total funding allocated from EDFD is almost 300 million. Out of the 350, soft pledged by EDFD. 150 million grant of agreements have been signed, while the other is still under due diligence, as I explained earlier. While for CIB, in the pipeline, we have almost project with 5.1 billion in requests. We financially closed 60 to about 65 megawatt in 2 years. I think comparison will be meaningful if we look for this after 5 years from now, or even 6 years specifically, representing 85 million financial close from private sector, while EDFD IRENA facility was almost public. For ETAF to this moment, we have also 7 billion project in request, almost 900 megawatt financially closed, with $1 billion of co-blended finance and different business model, including private sector and equity came from Masdar for these projects. So again, UAE putting the example for novelty here. That's very important. Another important issue is that when we look for the second column to the left, you say projects assessed and project supported. When we say project supported and CIB, meaning we bring the project into a meaningful definition to be presented to the subsequent financing consideration or thinking of putting that for due diligence by banks. But assessed projects under ETAF, meaning project is really bankable and considered for funding among partners. Also, this was presented by my colleagues Gorbos and Raul in their presentation, but the key issue here is that basically within the impact of what we have done is basically we mobilized 4 billion or actually 4.15 billion as soft pledge under ETAF and de-risking. And just to tell you that we never talked about what's in the pipeline. In the pipeline, I will explain at the end, but de-risking will be coming the main language and the main favored business and financing model in the coming at least 3 to 4 years, reaching 2030. As I mentioned before, in sum up, we received about 560 plus projects covering 100 basically projects along the 5 corners of the globe. And basically, until this moment, our impact reached 5 million people, and the emission reduction is almost 1.5 megawatt, which is almost triple times of the older facility. So we are making clear impact in response of the speeding up request for for Paris Agreement accords and targets to be met. That's my final slide. Looking ahead, what is it? This is exactly the same message about these 4 elements that the 7 APRA countries, as an example of the 170 countries of IRENA, is asking that there is a need for funding for project development. I know that most of the time thinking of grant, but actually it's not. It's vast, the majority is coming from grant, but there is a need for basically to develop projects along the equity. And we are doing that with IMF, led by Masdar. I cannot reveal details on this because we're still in the making, and also maybe through carbon credits. This is another very innovative model, but we're doing this because project development is really needed to support and also to avail for the cost for this. Collaboration among funding partners to remove access or any barriers to financing is a key. Again, we're talking project-based. We're not talking about in generic terms of policy development. No, we're talking about reaching financial closure. This is a target. And for that one, we are again working with World Bank, specifically MEGA on that front. The third issue is that capacity building is very important. If you see when we were in Nairobi last week, as an example, as we did the year before when we hosted in Uruguay, or by Uruguay government, that there is day after the other interest to receive more project-based capacity building following our business model. Finally, is that the issue of addressing knowledge-based or curated knowledge-based for technical assistance for projects to be financially closed is a key, and that's exactly what I referred in APRA. I stop here, and I believe there is a lot of question to clarify all issues what I mentioned, and I'm sorry that I'm giving a lot of terminology, but I stop here. Over to Mr. Chair, over to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Director General and Mr. Ahmed Badr, for your deliberations. I now open the floor for comments. Please raise your So now UAE, Madam, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to thank the Secretariat for this presentation, and it is extremely encouraging to see the excitement from the private sector and the government into the acceleration of tripling as we move forward. I think what we see from the comparison, which I don't think we can compare ADFT Arena facility with ETAF and CIP. I think they're very different platforms. But I think when we launched ADFT Arena facility, there has been a lot of work to be done to mobilize and accelerate the development of renewables. So the support of the governments and concessional funding has been extremely critical at this point. Moving forward, we are now, as everybody knows, with the drop in the prices of renewables, the increased political will from different governments to ensure that renewables is part of the energy security mix and the energy strategy. So the need for or the openness to have more commercially viable projects has been more extremely successful around the world. So this has been the thinking behind ETAF, is that we are now, it's extremely easy to identify a project that's commercially viable, and this is why we needed to have a platform where we engage different funding mechanism and seek innovation in this funding. So once more, thank you for the Secretariat for this presentation. It is actually a demonstration of how tripling can be viable when we have the right partners around the table. Thank you very much.
And now floor to the Germany.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the presentation. Germany appreciates the work done, and thank you to all the colleagues in PFS for their efforts on this. That's very good. At the same time, if you look at the numbers, this is not meant as criticism of the work, but it's obvious that the projects that can be supported by PFS, compared to the scale of what needs to happen to triple renewables globally, there can always only be a drop in the ocean. If you look at the pure numbers, that is clear. So for Germany, it would be important, or we'd like to encourage IRENA to look beyond these pure numbers when analyzing the impact of what PFS can achieve, specifically in how the work of PFS inspires and informs other parts of the work of IRENA, analysis, and so on. We'd be interested to hear whether you see these feedback loops of learning for the organization, as well as for companies and countries, whether the support you provide on these specific projects has also leverage in, like indirect effects on generally supporting and accelerating project developments. I think these are the effects we also need to look at, and we need to maximize in order to make the most of PFS. Thank you.
Thank you, Germany. Now, floor for Antigua and Barbados, followed by Zimbabwe.
Thank you, Chair. It's Antigua and Barbuda. Thank you for the presentation. I think it was really, really good. I think usually when we have discussions on financing, I'm usually interested in how how IRENA financing is impacting projects in small island developing states, and I note the type of work that is being done. I think coming from Antigua and Barbuda, we are particularly pleased with the engagement that we have had in the past with the ADFD. I think it has provided the type of support that is needed for the type of projects that we put forward. I think where we have some difficulty still is the understanding of the type of project of scale that the ETAF would engage in, and we understand the commercial viability of these projects. I think where I'm coming from is that perhaps there needs to be a little bit more of a push to support the work that the CIP is engaging in, because the CIP can support the type of projects that our small states are putting forward, noting that they're, number one, they're bankable, yes, but understand that the impact that they're making on our small countries. I think the point that Germany made is where I wanted to come in. I think Irina perhaps may need to refocus some of the work on not the scale of the projects, but the actual impact that it is making on the ground in small states, and perhaps encourage the agency to continue to look forward to producing projects and assisting small states in putting forward projects that create that type of impact that is needed on the ground. I think maybe just to clarify one point that you made, Director, and I'm not sure on how the ETAF and the CIP relates to the Green Climate Fund. And I know that you had explained some of the relationship between the funds and the Green Climate Fund. I think where we're coming from is that we've had difficulties, tremendous difficulty with the Green Climate Fund in terms of duration of time that we submit a project and the selection of our projects. And I'm wondering if the same difficulties we would encounter in how we submit projects with ETAF and CIP if they are in conjunction with the Green Climate Fund. So perhaps maybe some clarity on how you relate with the Green Climate Fund and how you can support small states when we put forward our projects and have our projects being submitted and implemented in a short time. And then maybe if you could probably provide some more examples of smaller countries that have benefited from the work that CIP and ETAF have engaged in. I'm fully aware of the ADFD. That is absolutely clear from our perspective, and we continue to commend the work that the ADFD have been doing in small states. But perhaps maybe just a little bit more emphasis on how the CIP and the ETAF have been engaging in small states, and perhaps how we can improve the relationship. I think from Antigua and Barbuda's standpoint, and I want to make it extremely clear that we're here to support the work of the agency. We're here to also promote the work of the agency, but I think we need a little more information in how we can promote the agency and the financial structures that the agency engages in. Thank you.
Thank you, Antigua and Barbuda. Now, floor for Zimbabwe.
Thank you. Good morning. Thank you for the presentation. I was going to make a comment on the numbers. If you look at the number of projects and the pipeline value, it's quite huge in terms of what is required to implement the energy projects. However, the projects which have managed to make it through the line are much less, especially if you look at under the CIP and the ETAF side, where financial closure has been for just a few projects. But we also appreciate from your recommendations that there's need for further training, for capacitation of the different project promoters so that they are clear in terms of what is needed to make the projects bankable. My question is that I don't think we are short of project pipelines. What we don't have is the financing. And it's very clear from what we've presented. Is there a way where we can also look at some of the current financial architecture and come up with more risk mitigating forms of innovative funding which will allow some of these projects to go through. I feel that there's still a bit of rigidity on the banking side, and we will need help, especially from partners here across the table, to come up with some form of risk mitigation or insurance to cover some of the projects which might be perceived as risky but are quite critical and needed. And then as Zimbabwe, we want to appreciate the work which has been done. We are part of the countries which are under the APRA side, and we did submit and upload a number of our projects under the CIP. And we appreciate the feedback which was given, and we have a few further follow-ups based on the identified partners. For us, this is a very critical way of really linking projects directly with potential funders. And we are hoping that as we do more, we will get further success. And the capacitation and the work which you are doing in terms of giving feedback on what is outstanding and is required to reach bankability is commendable. So thank you.
Thank you, Zimbabwe. Now the floor for Denmark.
Good morning. Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you to Irina for the presentation. Just a very brief comment. APRA Investment Forum in Nairobi, we believe, was a great opportunity to put SIP and ETAF into use. The project facilitation calls and workshops, that was a success, with 25 relevant projects being selected for receiving advisory through both SIP and ETAF. The feedback from those project developers has been very positive. So for us, it's very clear that these platforms generate a lot of value and are central tools for facilitating the acceleration of renewables around the world. However, it is also important that SIP and ETAF coordinate closely with other existing project facilitation platforms in order to avoid overlap, inefficiencies, and unnecessary competition for the same projects. Thank you.
Thank you. May I invite Uganda now, followed by Dominican Republic.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Irena, for that evolution of financing, which we have listened to, which is very encouraging. Just have a few comments which other delegations have touched on. One is we seem to be rotating in the same challenges in terms of financing. And I think we have not broken away from the commercial financing conditions, which seemed to have hampered the financing of the transition agenda. And until we break away from it and reduce on the conditions of financing, I think it will be very hard for projects to access this financing. We have to work out a mechanism of reducing on the conditions. As one delegation has said, the conditions seem to be very rigid and still pointing to the commercial angle rather than supporting the actual transition. Two, Chair, is on the funding which has been raised in the different cycles. I think we need to go further to interrogate and find out the number, the megawatts which have been supported vis-a-vis the financing. Sometimes we look at the financing and forget about the megawatts and end up utilizing most of it in administrative costs, and therefore do not cause the transition that is needed. The funds could be released, but we need to be aware that what we are trying to achieve is the transition to renewable energy. And then finally, Chair, is on the scale. Now, when you look at the financing that is being talked about, I think there are minimum and maximum levels of access to this financing, where the financing cycle says your project has to be $5 million or above. Is it possible to restructure these financing options to benefit the different scales of interventions? Because this transition will come at different levels, and I think some of the transitions that we are looking at, which actually impact directly on the communities, might need not high financing, but will create a very big impact onto the community. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now, Dominican Republic.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the agency for its work. In its capacity as Vice President of the 14th Assembly Bureau, representing the Latin America and the Caribbean Group, the Dominican Republic has chaired several rounds of consultations with the group's member states. As a result of these discussions and in regard to this specific topic, the Latin America and the Caribbean Group puts forth the following recommendations and requests to this 28th Council. The ETAF and CIP platforms have shown great potential in connecting developers and promoters of power generation initiatives and projects based on renewable energy to technical and financial institutions that may enable these to come to fruition. To harness the power of ETAF and CIP, the Latin American and the Caribbean Group recommends the focused promotion of the availability of these platforms directly to sectoral associations, as well as technical and financial entities at the country level, to encourage their adoption as tools that can contribute to the proper formulation of renewable energy projects, enhancing the technical and financial feasibility of such projects, while contributing to their de-risking, taking into account that these country-level organizations can serve as effective and efficient amplifiers of IRENA's efforts in promoting the adoption of ETAF and CIP. Additionally, the Latin American and the Caribbean Group stresses that ETAF and CIP should continue to prioritize renewable energy initiatives that align with the strategic objectives of emissions reduction and the 1.5 degrees Celsius climate target. It is therefore imperative that ETAF and CIP consider such projects for their investment potential regardless of scale. Furthermore, ETAF and CIP must ensure that our region has access to financing at the most favorable concessional rates available. On an individual level, the Dominican Republic would like to request the Council to instruct the relevant departments within the agency to present disaggregated information that reflects the countries where the projects are coming from, the level of readiness or bankability of these projects when initially presented, how many of the projects that get technical assistance become bankable, project size in terms of installed capacity, and also the investment requirements of these projects when initially presented. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now the floor for Eswatini, followed by the Philippines.
Thank you, Chair, and Eswatini appreciates the insightful presentation. Our comment is on the projects which have potential, but they cannot take off because of lack of funding to do detailed feasibility studies. So our comment is that if the bankability assistance could consider structuring such that it supports funding for feasibility studies for projects that have shown potential through preliminaries or pre-feasibility studies. In Eswatini, we do have projects for hydro, for geothermal, whose preliminaries or assessments have shown potential, but we need funding to do the detailed feasibility studies. Thank you.
Thank you. Now the floor for the Philippines.
Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Thank you for the presentation. Thank you, Mr. Chair. We're inspired on these two flagship programs of the IRENA, the Energy Accelerator Financing Platform and the Climate Investment Platforms. We're looking forward for the technical assistance and the capacity building for the Philippine renewable energy developers who may be interested to apply. With that, thank you very much.
Thank you for your valuable comments. If there is no comments from the floor, may I now request the Director General to address the issue? Okay. There is Tonga. Now, floor for Tonga.
My apologies, Chair. I just want to associate Tonga's position with the distinguished delegate from the Dominican Republic and his remarks, and ask that the same information be provided for Pacific Island countries. And if there is no information available relating to ETAF on the Pacific Island countries, how is IRENA going to accelerate that in order for us to meet our tripling of renewable energy? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Tonga. May I now request the Director General to address the issues raised by the members and provide overall reactions on the deliberations.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, Ahmed has presented the two initiatives, also trying to link with what was already done before the starting of my tenure. I thought that the initiative on the Abu Dhabi Fund for Development was a very good one. It was achieved some result, and I've started to work with them at the beginning, discussing how we can continue and having a facility 2.0. And they made clear to me that we are ready to continue work with ARENA, but they didn't want to be alone in that. So our first task was trying to attract others to have a facility 2.0. So the first exercise has been to have other partners. So Mazda joined very, very easily, and then we worked for having other partners. And now, as you know, we started with the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank. So we went also to insurance companies with three. We continue with the Islamic Development Bank and the other funds, especially because of the fund provided for grants. We also work with the European Reconstruction Development Bank that now can work also, is mandated to work also in Africa. We close with the Inter-American Development Bank. We had an agreement with also the HSBC, that is a private bank. And we worked for having an agreement with the World Bank. And they join as a group with two initiatives. One is the MIGA, that is concerning the risk mitigation, and the other is the IFC, that is mainly provide funding for private companies. And lastly, we also, Africa 50, join our list of partners. Naturally, if you look at the number, I think Michael is correct, it's a drop in the ocean. Naturally, we have to understand that we have also our constraint on our capacity. But at the same time, I'm satisfied to notice that the soft commitment that we have received are half of the commitment for the Green Climate Fund. So I think is the attractiveness of the initiative is there. I think the initiative is attractive also because there is no bureaucracy. What we do is just to work with the country and the proponent to bring the project at the level that could be considered by our partners, and then we assist both the partners and the proponent until we get the financial flows. And anyway, the result that we had until now are relevant. And surely that's also if you consider the cost related to our activities and the value of the project that we have facilitated is 1 to 10,000. It is a cost-benefit ratio that is absolutely impressive. So that there are naturally, what are the strengths of ETAF and CIP for the starting? Is that because we, as I told you many times, we have tried to provide for a virtuous circle, the planning, until the project implementation, then the monitoring, and again. And so the reason for having 5 regional outlook for Africa, for the regional outlook for South America, for Southeast Asia. And this is also the reason for provide all efforts to support the NDCs that are anyway energy planning. So we can go from the planning to the project and then the implementation. So this gives to the initiative a particular strength. We see one weak point in this circle, and this is the fact that sometimes, as has been noticed by some of the intervention, that we are not an implementing agency, so we cannot work on the feasibility, pre-feasibility and feasibility of the project. So sometimes the project come to us that are almost with all the information. Sometimes it's just a question to put the information in good shape, but sometimes we don't have all the information for bringing the project to the attention of the partners. So we are not, our weakness is in the lack of capacity to maturing projects. We are working with our partners. Also, we are working with the Industrial Transition Accelerated Initiative was launched at COP28 to have partners for this phase. We are looking for our partners of upper, GIZ, the Danish embassy, the Danish agency, to try to cover this phase. We work with Masdar on that, and naturally we welcome all other that may contribute to give capacity to this very important step. So let the project maturing at a stage that the bankability could be really accessed. And we are working on that, and hope that we can come with some very positive result soon. Also this week I will meet virtually Mr. McCartney, that is leading the ITA, to see how we can make our two initiatives working better together, because they have the capacity for maturing the projects. We will see, and I will inform you accordingly one that we may have this. Concerning the small country, the only example that we may have, but other we have, is Dominica, but I think that St. Kitts and Nevis, so I think that Ahmed can speak about what we have done for small countries. When we talk about Dominica, and it's also small islands, and see how this experience could be replicated. It's not been easy because we put so many actors all together for making this happening. At least we closed the financial agreement for Dominica, as far as I remember. Concerning the scale of the project, naturally we cannot go for a project that have a prohibitive cost with ETAF, but we can do with CIP. Because in ETAF we privilege a certain kind of project, but with CIP we can fund all amounts. We have found a project for the big amount is for a project in Uzbekistan that we found putting together many actors. No? Yes. The Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, Masdar, yes. the European Investment Bank, the government, and I think also Swiss Re. Yeah. So, sometimes also our work is to put partners together for leveraging. So also projects, the bankability could be also guaranteed by some concessional loan, as we have made for the small island. Thanks also to support the US. That's pushed for having the World Bank providing under their storage initiative a grant for that project. So we can work all together for making things happening. I wish also ways to notice that we have 4 to 5 people working on this, and the impact of the work of these people is absolutely amazing. So also containing the industrial scale project, we have opened the facility for greening industry. What does it mean? This means that we think that it's fair that the country that have the mineral and rare earth that are so essential for the energy transition may have the capacity. We have a mineral in Latin America, we have it in Argentina, we have it in Africa, we have in Southeast Asia. Sometimes we have to provide, to give the technology and provide also for making the alliance at the level of private sector to have this investment happening. But we are ready to facilitate that. And also concerning APRA, this initiative is attract also interest. We are trying to move to have APRA have also the green industrialization of the APRA country to be considered. We wish to use the APRA model without additional cost for the agency. So always through voluntary contribution for the Southeast Asia, for Latin America. We are starting to work with our Brazilian colleague. Hopefully Brazil will join the agency before the end of this year. At least they promise to join. But we are trying to push them to have the same role that Kenya and President Ruto had in Africa for the APRA, for having something similar for Latin America. So naturally, we are pushing all these things to happen. It's not easy. It implies a lot of work. Concerning the information, I think that we can provide all the information that you have requested. The only limitation that we may encounter on some private project for a question of confidentiality. So we cannot, give information that belong to a private company if we are not allowed by them. And also in the decision-making process concerning funding, the confidentiality of certain information when we talk about sector should be guaranteed. What we are doing for the time being, that every time that we are receiving a project from a private company that is based in one country, we immediately inform the country that we have received the project. But in your database, you have already seen that we are able to point when where the projects are based. And so we're trying we can also may think if we have enough money to have a dedicated website where with some password, the member state can access and see the state of all different projects. So we will try to do our best to provide this full transparency in our work. So I think is what there is also one thing that was important was mentioned, the risking. We have worked on that. In my last visit in location of the climate week in New York, I took time to go also to Washington to meet the vice president of the World Bank dealing with MIGA. We have been working with them, and now they want to launch a new scheme for the risking that will rationalize all different stream of work of the World Bank And they want to apply this scheme for all the APRA and other ETAF projects. And we will launch, the MIGA will launch together with us in COP29 this new scheme of the risking. Hopefully it will work, and we are quite confident that we are also pleased that they thought that we could be the one working together on this very relevant area of work for projects to happen on the ground. So I hope I touched all the points that have been raised. And can I ask, with your permission, Mr. Chair, Ahmed, to give some clarification on the small project that we have finalized for Dominica. Please.
Thank you, DG. In response to this specific project, it's one of the projects that followed the confidentiality arrangement. That's for the state of Dominica. I do see Excellency Ambassador of Dominica is here. So during COP28, and with the complete on 100% backup from the United States, which we thank you very much, we facilitated the private sector intervention to turn the whole country into at least 35% of the power into green, so a private sector company. And this is basically happened because of the technical assistance and restructuring and decorated technical assistance we provided. And I would like here to thank also United States again and the commitment from the government of Dominica. With your permission, DG, I would like to add that we are replicating that now with other two countries. One of them is United Arab Emirates with Commerce, and the other one also we do now with the Denmark and Germany under APRA, as we discussed last week. So thanks to UAE, to Germany and Denmark, as well as Economies. Thank you very much, DG.
Thank you, Director General and Mr. Ahmad Badr, for your reflections. The Council takes note of the interventions made by the Member States on this agenda item. This concludes our consideration for agenda item 6 of the agenda. Now we'll move to agenda item 7. I invite the Council to turn to agenda item 7, steering the energy transformation of small islands economies through partnership and innovative indigenous solutions. In preparation for discussion under this item, a background note with the same title set out in document C/28/BN/3 has been circulated. I now invite the Director General to introduce the topic. Director General, you have the floor now.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we now go into the session on steering the energy transformation of small island economies through partnership and innovative indigenous solution. Today's discussion is both timely and crucial, building on the momentum of the 4th International Conference on Small Island Developing States held this past May in Antigua and Barbuda, where I've been the honor to be invited and to participate. The adoption of the transformative Antigua and Barbuda agenda for SIDS, ABAS, sets a bold vision for the sustainable development of SIDS over the next decade. It clearly defined the international support required to make these ambitions a reality. In particular, Article 8 of the ABAS agenda underscores a priority that lies at the very heart of resilience, ensuring access to affordable, reliable, sustainable, and modern energy, especially renewable energy. But we know the journey ahead is not without challenges, from the high cost of financing to the urgent needs for skilled local workforces prepared to drive inclusive, just, and resilient energy transitions. In this regard, as the coordinator of the SIDS Lighthouse Initiative, ARENA remains steadfast in its commitment to working closely with SIDS and partners to address these pressing challenges. The initiative has now grown to include 41 SIDS countries and 53 partners, which includes developed countries, regional and international organizations, development agencies, private companies, research institutes, and non-profit organizations. Recognized as the first recipient of the United Nations SIDS Partnership Award in 2022, the SIDS Lighthouse Initiative stands as a testament to collaborative action, aligning with the core pillar of both the Samoa Pathway and the ABAS Agenda. Through our contribution to the ABAS Monitoring and Evaluation Framework, we aim to systematically track progress, coordinate resources, and amplify action across SIDS. To further develop and triple the uptake of installed renewable capacity in SIDS, ARENA has hosted several regional capacity building workshops across all SIDS in the Pacific, Atlantic, Indian Ocean, and South China Seas region. This has included several capacity building workshops on SIDS progress indicators and impact measures, design of bankable power, purchase agreement, and workshop on project financing and facilitation. We have also discussed it in the occasion of the pre-committee, how we can align also our monitoring system with the monitor system that is going to be put in place to monitor the implementation of the ABAS. Today's session aims to spotlight SIDS energy transition priorities as articulated in the ABAS. We will also assess the progress made in achieving the initiative, about target of reaching and growing beyond 10 gigawatts of total renewable energy capacity across all SIDS by 2030, and discuss the resourcing and actionable strategy required to reach the critical last mile towards energy resilience, sustainability, and security. Furthermore, our discussions will explore innovative mechanisms to expand the initiative's impact as we work to foster greater accountability, transparency, and measurable action. Our aim is to leverage tailored support, ensuring the SIDS energy transition not only meet their goals, but inspiring enduring partnerships. With this objective in focus, with your permission, Mr. Chair, I am pleased to hand over to Mr. Gorbus Gunul, Director of Country Engagement and Partnership, to provide the synthetic presentation. Gorbus, the work is yours.
Thank you very much, Director General. Excellencies, distinguished council members, ladies and gentlemen. To set the stage for today's discussion, it is important to acknowledge the unique circumstances that have historically influenced the journey of small island developing states towards sustainable development. Navigating this path through strategic partnerships and innovative indigenous solutions is not only vital for their resilience and survival, but also crucial for securing their long-term prosperity and advancing global climate action. SIDS continue to face distinct challenges that profoundly shape their development trajectory, including small economies, limited natural resources, geographic isolation, and heightened vulnerability to the impacts of climate change. As we know, SIDS are disproportionately affected by climate-related disasters, with annual adaptation costs reaching up to $26 billion US, amounting to 4 to 5% of their GDP. Over the past 50 years, cumulative losses linked to climate change have exceeded $153 billion US dollars, pushing more than 40% of SIDS into debt distress. High electricity and transportation costs, coupled with food and fuel imports that constitute around 40% of their GDP, further strain their economies. This dependence limits their economic growth and resilience, exacerbating their vulnerabilities and constraining their ability to thrive. We see the spectrum of vulnerabilities faced by SIDS as captured by the Multidimensional Vulnerability Index, MVI. SIDS rank among the highest globally in terms of vulnerabilities, and even within the ACE, Caribbean, and Pacific regions, there are varying levels of economic, structural, and environmental challenges. This highlights the urgent need for targeted support and provides a more accurate framework for directing development assistance, as emphasized in the MVI. Despite these inherent challenges, since SIDS have demonstrated a strong and sustained commitment to accelerating their energy transition. By the end of 2023, total installed renewable energy capacity across SIDS is estimated to have reached 8.76 gigawatt, showing consistent year-on-year growth. The deployment of renewable energy makes electricity access a reality for remote communities, bringing development and prosperity to these areas. Despite commendable progress in providing electricity to the populations across the 3 SIDS regions, some countries still face significant access challenges. For instance, in the Caribbean, Haiti has less than 50% electricity access. In the ACE region, Guinea-Bissau stands at 37%, and in the Pacific, Papua New Guinea is as low as 19%. Energy has consistently been recognized as a key enabler of sustainable development, forming the backbone of economic growth, social inclusion, and environmental sustainability in SIDS. From the Samoa Pathway to the recently adopted Antigua-Barbuda Agenda for SIDS, ABAS, these global frameworks have maintained a strong focus on similar development priorities. And the continued prioritization of energy within these frameworks reflects a deep understanding that sustainable energy solutions are not just about powering economies, they are equally about unlocking long-term resilience and prosperity for SIDS as they confront climate challenges, drive innovation, and secure a sustainable future. The ABAS framework has set clear priorities for advancing sustainable energy transition in SIDS by boosting investment, partnerships, and technology to meet ambitious renewable energy targets. It calls for removing financial and structural barriers through improved policies, tailored technologies, and enhanced grid infrastructure while ensuring inclusive and resilient energy systems. To achieve its goal, the ABAS emphasizes the need for tailored support through partnerships at all levels, involving governments, the private sector, civil society, and other key stakeholders. Its energy transition priorities align closely with the 12 priority areas of the SIDS Lighthouses Initiative, which was launched in 2014 in response to Samoa Pathway and reaffirmed by ABAS in 2024, with Irina as the coordinator. Since the inception, the SIDS Lighthouses Initiative has evolved into a diverse multi-stakeholder partnership. Its partnership base has grown by 140%, and today it brings together 41 SIDS from the ACE, Caribbean, and Pacific regions, alongside 53 partners, including governments, development banks, private companies, and research institutions. Recent additions such as Jamaica, the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, and Drift Energy reflect the growing ambition and also the diversity of partnerships to drive the initiative. Thanks to SIDS' commitment and leadership, they surpassed the original 2014 Lighthouses targets 3 years ahead of schedule, and consecutively prompting the setting of new targets in 2018 aiming for 10 gigawatt, I wish it would be 100 gigawatt, of total installed renewable capacity by 2030 in all SIDS. As SIDS push towards the last mile, increased capacity and financial support are critical to ensure no one is left behind. One of the key objectives of SIDS Lighthouse Initiative is to provide a platform for uniting SIDS and their partners to voice SIDS challenges and opportunities and respond to calls for targeted support and sustainable partnerships. Through high-level dialogues at the UN General Assembly, SIDS4, IRENA Assembly, the agency is dedicated to facilitating collaboration and strengthening commitment as we move towards COP29 and beyond. As SIDS prepare for third cycle of their national determined contributions, IRENA remains dedicated to supporting them in achieving their targets. Analysis from previous NDC cycles shows that while SIDS ambitions has grown, they remain conditional on adequate support. Since 2014, IRENA has provided assistance to 40 SIDS through 331 activities. Only during the last cycle of NDC updates, we have supported 22 SIDS through 50 activities over the last 5 years. We will continue to offer tailor-made support for data and statistics, assessments and roadmaps, capacity building, project identification and facilitation, while facilitating South-South cooperation and knowledge exchange. Complementing this support, IRENA has harnessed regional partnerships to effectively address the common intra-regional priorities and needs of SIDS. I have picked 3 examples of regional capacity building programs across SIDS regions where IRENA has been contributing or supporting in different ways. Energy management and energy audits in the Pacific, where we enhance the capacity and auditing skills of 32 entry-level energy officers, private sector representatives, and industry stakeholders from 14 Pacific SIDS, to improve energy efficiency in key economic sectors, particularly the tourism sector. The GeoBuild geothermal capacity building program in the Eastern Caribbean, in which we are focusing on strengthening regional geothermal expertise, collaboration among key stakeholders, and facilitating the sustainable development of geothermal resources to support energy resilience and economic growth in the region. The IRENA-led Global Geothermal Alliance is leading the development of stakeholder engagement strategy for the program. And the capacity building program on renewable energy power purchase agreements for strengthening the ability of SIDS to attract private sector investments. IRENA also collaborates closely with partners on the ground to implement impactful country-driven assessments that address specific challenges. A notable example is the Solomon Island Renewable Readiness Assessment. I think that was referred to by the delegation yesterday, which was launched in February and identified critical priorities and already garnered support from organizations such as ADB and JICA in the implementation of the recommendations. Another noteworthy example underscores the transformative potential of renewable energy in improving the delivery of healthcare in SIDS, specifically in Sao Tome and Principe. It finds that decentralized solar photovoltaic solutions are reliable and cost-effective for powering critical medical services, thereby enhancing infrastructure resilience in a climate-vulnerable country. The assessment also provides tailored technical designs, cost estimates, and sustainable operational models for electrifying health post centers and hospitals. Of the estimated $11.25 million needed for implementation, the assessment has informed the government of Sao Tome and Principe in getting commitments of $4.25 million from the World Bank and private CSR contribution, which in fact corresponds to more than 1/3 of what is needed to electrify the entire network in the country. Additionally, focused support in the form of legislative and regulatory gap analysis is currently underway in Fiji With this, we aim at identifying main gaps for aligning policies, legislation, and governing institutions to support the growth of renewable energy, and then providing recommendations that will offer solutions to create a stronger enabling environment for increasing private sector investments in Fiji. These tailored assessments are backed by IRENA's comprehensive data, resource, and socioeconomic assessments, which provide the critical insights and analysis needed for informed decision-making. And my fellow director, Raul, will further elaborate on this work in a moment. To further enable investments in energy transition projects, IRENA investment forums provide a platform for high-level dialogue for creating conducive investment environments for energy transition, as well as connecting bankable projects with potential investors and financiers for funding. The IRENA Caribbean Cooperation event held in Barbados identified key priorities for Caribbean SIDS, including the need for fit-for-purpose regulatory frameworks and bankable power purchase agreements, while looking at opportunities for integrating national grids, enhancing public-private partnership structures, and creating regional pool procurement mechanisms. Local capabilities and skills are limited, including financial institutions and developers, and the need for stronger support for project identification and development is evident. Recognizing the urgent need to drive project implementation and enhance access to financing in SIDS, IRENA for the first time supported a scheme to improve project identification and concept development capabilities of Vanuatu's Department of Energy. This technical assistance developed project concepts targeting 5 villages and is poised to benefit over 2,000 residents by improving energy security, enhancing productivity, and delivering socioeconomic benefits, particularly for women and girls in rural areas. As a result of this support, the Department of Energy has secured a $5 million grant from the Asian Development Bank. Also, project concepts have been submitted for additional funding from PRIO program and JEF Small Grants program. For SIDS, it's more advanced stages of project development, such as Dominica's geothermal project. IRENA has played a key role. My colleague Ahmed already elaborated on that point, so I will move to the next slide on this. As SIDS continue to make progress in realizing their energy transition ambitions, it is important to ensure that the support is aligned with their needs. In pursuit of this, IRENA, through the SIDS Lighthouse initiative, has developed progress indicators and impact measures that are closely aligned with the ABAS monitoring and evaluation framework that is being developed through an interagency task force. The Director General also highlighted IRENA's also monitoring evaluation framework is also aimed to support this effort. We are happy to report that Antigua Barbuda, Seychelles, and Tonga are piloting these indicators, which will guide the rollout for the entire SIDS in the coming period. And finally, Lighthouse Initiative knowledge sharing platforms, they play a pivotal role in connecting SIDS with global partners to amplify awareness of their energy transition and climate action efforts. Over the past year, these platforms have seen significant engagement with over 4,700 users and over 13,000 page views, demonstrating active interest in tools, country profiles, and publications. And expanding digital presence across social media platforms, the SIDS Lighthouses continues to inspire and inform global audiences by sharing success stories and driving conversations around sustainable energy and climate resilience in SIDS and island economies alike. Now, let me hand over the floor to my colleague Raul for his intervention.
Thank you, Gurbuz. I'd like to give more details on the support that we provide in terms of data, so you can see how everything connects together. So we are supporting SIDS on data collection, analysis, technical and institutional capacity, which is a challenge that has been highlighted by the Antigua and Barbuda agenda for SIDS. The first area that I'd like to highlight on this is data. We provide country support relating to data collection and analysis, including regional capacity building trainings, supporting on developing NDCs, monitoring, reporting, and evaluations of targets, capacity gap analysis, and support on developing energy surveys. A few recent examples include Tonga, Antigua and Barbuda, and St. Lucia. Speaking of data, it is worth recognizing that SIDS have an installed renewable energy capacity of over 6 gigawatt as of 2023. That installed capacity has increased more than 2.5 times in the past decade compared to 2013. This makes the SIDS a collective grouping with one of the highest growth rates. That said, looking at the global picture, there is still need for concentrated effort in increasing renewable capacity in SIDS, which have less than 1% of the total global installed capacity, despite the potential. To this end, IRENA is also supporting countries on understanding and assessing renewable potential through the Global Atlas for Renewable Energy initiative. Since 2017, the agency has been supporting SIDS at different stages of the project development process. At the planning stage, we provide up-to-date renewable energy data through the Global Atlas platform. We have specifically supported Solomon Island and Belize in understanding their hydropower potential. We further engage with cities in Antigua and Barbuda, Belize, Guyana, St. Kitts and Nevis, St. Lucia, Seychelles, Mauritius, Sao Tome and Principe, and the Solomon Islands to assess the rooftop solar potential for accelerating deployment of PV systems. At the project level, the agency has supported Cape Verde, Comoros, Montserrat, and Nauru with pre-feasibility site assessment across multiple solar PV and wind sites. The Antigua and Barbuda agenda for SIDS also emphasizes the importance of international support, climate finance, and investments. IRENA's analysis on the renewable energy component in NDCs shows that national ambition is quite high, with several countries having set 100% renewable power targets. Across NDCs, SIDS have committed to a total renewable installed capacity of more than 13 gigawatts by 2030, up from almost 6 gigawatts in 2022. However, almost half of the targeted capacity is conditional on international support. IRENA estimates that SIDS will need a minimum of $10.5 billion to meet their NDC targets, almost half of which is in the form of financial assistance from international sources. A large portion of those targets are based on solar PV. A study on the policies needed for the deployment of distributed PV in the SIDS in a way that maximizes the socioeconomic benefits is currently being finalized. Finally, the agency has also been focusing on analyzing the socioeconomic dimension. After all, for investments to be transformative, they need to be tailored to improving people's lives. As the Antigua and Barbuda agenda for SIDS mentions, achieving objectives such as gender equality, empowering the youth, and leaving no one behind is critical. Most recently, we have published 2 reports on small islands development states at a crossroads. One report assesses SIDS that are largely electrified, but still rely heavily on imported fossil fuels, and the other feature contexts with significant unelectrified populations. We find that in both contexts, deployment of renewables creates local jobs, including for women, in construction and installation, operation and maintenance, and productive uses. Among the needed policy support measures highlighted, arrangement for building local skills will be key. Across these areas, IRENA looks forward to scaling up support, and we are grateful to the donors who are contributing to this effort. Thank you.
Thank you, Director General, Mr. Gurbaz Gonul, and Mr. Raul Paliso for your deliberations. I now invite the Council to turn to the screen, where a video will be displayed on human impact of renewable energy in Seychelles, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and Samoa. This powerful visual aims to raise awareness among the public, partners, and key stakeholders about the achievements, opportunities, and challenges in SIDS energy transition. It also serves as a compelling call to action for the international community to support the replication and scaling of this successfully across the SIDS through increased financial support, technical assistance, and capacity building efforts. Let us see the video.
We are contributing little to the impact of climate change, but we are the ones suffering the most.
Pilots can actually show the way and help the bigger countries to work together to achieve those global goals.
Since solar power has been installed, I have realized it is not only for reducing bills, but it is also helping to fight against global warming.
Freshwater is a concern within St. Vincent and the Grenadines.
Since the introduction of the plan, almost zero complaints now during the dry season.
Samoa is still heavily dependent on imported fossil fuels. The country is using efforts to transition to sustainable energy.
We prioritize placing women at the center of energy transition policies to empower the communities to generate employment and new business opportunities.
We need funds and we need support.
Come work with us and you will see results.
If we don't contain global warming to 1.5 degrees above pre-industrial levels, this planet ain't gonna be worth living in.
Thank you for such a compelling and significant video. May I now open the floor for comments? Floor is open for comments on the deliberations. Yes, floor for Antigua and Barbuda.
Thank you, Chair. And thanks to the Director General and both directors for a really rich presentation on SIDS. I will admit that I have now had to change my intervention because you've provided so much information, but I think you've provided the quality of support that IRENA is providing to SIDS, and I'm happy that this item has been placed on the agenda. I've been advocating for it for a while, and you have delivered. So I really want to commend you on this. And so I won't even go into the full script of my presentation, but perhaps just to highlight some points for effective partnerships, both with the IRENA SIDS Lighthouse and the support that you can continue to offer in the implementation of the ABAS. And so perhaps I'll start with capacity building. So there must be investments in the most precious resources in SIDS. And that precious resource, of course, is our people. It's the human capacity in itself. And so we would encourage you to continue through comprehensive training programs and educational initiatives that will support, in particular, the just transition of our workforce as we move towards 100% renewable objective. I think also what is important for us is the continued support in technical assistance. I would encourage you to ensure that this is more targeted to enable projects that suit our unique environment. I think a lot of times we're offered technical assistance and support, but based on the environment that we live in, some of these technical assistance and support isn't necessarily conducive, and so I would encourage the organization to continue to tailor the type of support that is needed for SIDS. I think on the matter of policy support, I think this is key to the progress in our regulatory frameworks. I think by developing and implementing policies that are targeted, they would foster a lot more renewable energy adoption. And our regular frameworks, I think this is where we need a lot more support coming from the agencies. I'm happy that the director touched on the issue of finance. This is critically important for us. I note that you've indicated what $10 billion will be needed to implement our NDCs. Let's be honest. I think $10 billion is a small amount that can facilitate the implementation of SIDS NDCs. And so I would encourage our developed partners to continue to support SIDS in this objective. But I think how we look at finance differs in SIDS. I think one of the main barriers that we have is the access to finance. A lot of our countries have graduated in middle and high income categories. None of our wishes, perhaps, because this now restrict the type of finances that we can have access to. In despite of the fact that we are affected by climate change in a manner that we don't have the capacity and the finance to implement these projects, and we're still restricted from the type of access to finance. The MVI that you have pointed out have provided or will provide this platform for added access to finance. But I do believe that the initiatives of ETAF, CIP, can also facilitate the type of access to finance that we would need. And I have one question, perhaps on how the SIDS Lighthouse in itself would coordinate some of the work with the ETAF and the CIP. I think perhaps maybe a greater explanation on how the SIDS Lighthouse interact with the ITAF and the CIP. I think also on innovation and technology, this is critically important for us. And so we would hope that IRENA would continue to facilitate the type of innovation and technology in renewables presented to SIDS. And I want to end on the point of greater facilitation between IRENA and SIDS. And we talk about the ABAS a lot. The ABAS for Antigua and Barbuda, and I'm sure for majority of SIDS, it's quite groundbreaking in itself. But a key anchor within the ABAS is the SIDS Center of Excellence, and you did point it out. But the SIDS Center of Excellence is quite unique. It is built by SIDS, it is designed by SIDS, it is tailored for SIDS specifically. And so the way that we're fashioning the SIDS Lighthouse is to respond immediately to the needs of SIDS. And so IRENA can facilitate in how you work along with the partnership of SIDS, and the Center of Excellence. The Center of Excellence is the key anchor of the Antigua and Barbuda agenda for SIDS, and so the SIDS Lighthouse in itself can facilitate this partnership with the Center of Excellence. The Center of Excellence has three components. It has a global data hub, it has an island investment forum, and it has a technology and innovation mechanism. I think all three components are critically important to how the SIDS Lighthouse interact with the implementation of the ABAS. I note the work that you're doing on data. Our data hub needs this type of assistance in ensuring that we not only look at the type of data support that SIDS need, but it also provides our policymakers with the type of support for informed decision making. I think when it comes to the innovation and technology mechanism within the Center of Excellence in itself, this could also be an avenue where IRENA can help to facilitate the transition of the type of technology that is needed for SIDS. And then the Island Investment Forum. I think this is where the ETAF and the CIP could play a fundamental role in how it assists SIDS in acquiring the type of financing that is necessary. And then finally, on the monitoring and implementation framework, I think this is quite unique because throughout the 30 years of international program of actions on SIDS, there have never ever been a monitoring and evaluation framework that would assess how these 10-year programs, whether or not they're successful for SIDS. So we're now designing this implementation and monitoring framework. We do need the assistance of IRENA to coordinate in our renewable energy targets, to indicate to us whether or not we are on track. We know that we are currently not on track to meet the 10 gigawatt goals unless we get accelerated progress. And so I want to encourage IRENA to continue to support SIDS, continue to be advocate for SIDS, but also I'm pleased with the type of support that is being offered. I'm pleased with the presentation, and I cannot offer more congratulations to you and your team, and especially to those who work in the SIDS Lighthouse.
Thank you. Now the floor for the United States of America, followed by Tonga.
Thank you, Chair. I would just like to commend the work of all involved in achieving current level of renewable deployment. In the IRENA report, we note that there's 8.7 gigawatts deployed, and as Antigua and Barbuda noted, that gets us closer to the 10 gigawatt goal, but it's important to keep up the momentum and accelerate it if we're to meet that goal. The United States continues to support small island states in development and deployment of renewable energy, as the DG noted and Secretariat noted in the previous session. We've supported geothermal energy development in Dominica, and we are working with IRENA as well on hopefully deploying in St. Kitts and Nevis as well. Would note that the SIDS countries do not contribute in any real way to climate change, but they are leading by example. And the implementation of renewable energy also addresses a lot of economic challenges of the SIDS countries. I recall from yesterday, the Solomon Islands mentioned they have one of the highest cost electricity tariffs in the world. I believe it is 80 cents a kilowatt hour. So reducing those fuel import costs contribute to economic competitiveness, including in the all-important tourism sector by reducing costs in that sector. So I'd just like to conclude by also recognizing and thanking Antigua and Barbuda for hosting the International Conference on SIDS earlier this year. So we'd like to continue to build on momentum from that, both with our IRENA partners as well as our activities outside IRENA, including the U.S. Caribbean Partnership to Address the Climate Crisis 2030, PAC 2030. So the United States looks forward to listening to and working with our SIDS partners around this table about additional lines of effort that can help achieve our goal of 10 gigawatts of renewable energy development. Thank you.
Thank you. Now the floor for Tonga.
Thank you very much, Chair. It's always very difficult to take the floor after one of your distinguished colleagues like Antigua Barbuda have basically said everything that you wanted to say. So I don't want to repeat that, but I do want to commend the Director and the Director General for this excellent work and information on SIDS and continued engagement with the SIDS Lighthouse. I would like to make a suggestion, if that's possible, with respect to the Assembly and how the ministerial SIDS meeting is held. I think it's very important that when you have high-level political engagement, that you take advantage of it. And I think the SIDS ministerials that have been held in previous assemblies have just been country reports, which is very similar to what happens at council. What I would suggest is that Irina look at the 39 members and possibly spurn the ministers into agreeing for one publication that identifies exactly how each SIDS country is going to achieve its tripling of energy. You have some fantastic associated publications identified, and as you spoke to during your presentation, it's difficult for ministers to cart that around to meetings or to dialogue or to even read them. Whereas if you had one document that identified each country's requirements to meet the tripling of renewables and the deficiencies and even associated costs, so there was actually a figure that would help ministers, it would also put IRENA at the forefront of facilitating the tripling of renewable energy, in facilitating it with development partners. As my distinguished colleague from Antigua Barbuda pointed out, all of our development partners are present here, maybe with the exemption of some of the banks. But all the countries that help SIDS are present here today. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Tunga. Now the floor for Denmark.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you to Irina for the presentation and for the video. I think hearing those voices and also reading the latest UNEP report yesterday emphasizes the importance of the work done here. Denmark has for many years been engaged with SIDS and the work of IRENA under the SIDS Lighthouse initiative. Denmark values SIDS as a key partner in highlighting the need for immediate, urgent climate action, including transitioning away from fossil fuels in the energy systems, tripling renewable energy capacity, doubling energy efficiency, holding deforestation and guidance for future NDCs. The Antigua and Barbuda agenda for SIDS, ABAS, which was engaged this year at the SIDS 4 conference, is said to be a milestone for the acceleration of sustainable development and renewable of SIDS. Denmark is proud to have contributed to the constructive negotiation of the ABAS, supporting the SIDS needs and wishes all the way through the negotiations, especially regarding the high climate ambitions. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now floor for Mauritius.
Thank you, Chair. My intervention will be an unusual one, so I'd like to make a disclaimer at the very start. Allow me to start by commending IRENA for this item, where we are sharing experiences and intervention. So we understand that it is well recognized that SIDS have got specificities that have got to be taken into consideration. I would like to make a request to IRENA, a very pragmatic one, because like I stated yesterday, most of us SIDS and Mauritius in particular, we have set very ambitious targets. We've got less than 6 years, 5 years to be able to attain 60% of renewables in our mix. We are around 25% today, and really the work acceleration is not fast enough for us. So we've been kind of looking for very innovative means of accelerating the deployment of our RE project. And for those countries who are endowed only with the sun and the ocean, without much other resources, while we need to look at climate security, we also need to look at energy security. Base load is a very important issue for us. The variables have got intermittency that we want to address. As I said yesterday also, batteries have got some limitation, and we can't keep installing batteries excessively, let's put it like this. So small island means small size, means small scale, means very little interest from developers, means issues of bankability, and I won't list, most of us know all these issues. My request is that can IRENA support a few of the small island states who've got common projects? I'll take the case of Mauritius. We've started a pre-feasibility in offshore wind, and we believe that there is some very interesting prospect in moving towards offshore wind. But we know that it is very difficult with the scale that we have, the small grid that we have, to be able to mobilize a developer with all the investment required in that particular technology to come and install like 50 megawatt or 100 megawatt of an offshore wind farm with all that it requires in the middle of the Indian Ocean. We do recognize that, and consultants who've been working with us have also drawn our attention to that. Is it at all possible for IRENA to kind of facilitate some form of common project among a few of us who've got like offshore wind projects in their NDCs coming up in the few years, from start to end? Working with us, we have seen the pool procurement, for instance, is something that has worked. Can it be something that can be considered so that we can gather more interest? You can have a project of a sufficient scale to interest a promoter, a developer, and there can be bankability also. This is something that individually a SID cannot do, but we need to be able to look up to kind of, overarching organization who can do that. I don't know to what extent you can help, if at all. In whatever stage of the process, it would be most valuable just to help us kickstart or to take us from start to end. I would put the question to IRENA. I would like to get some comments on this proposal. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mauritius. Now the floor for Dominican Republic.
Thank you, Chair. The Caribbean small island developing states have been grappling with a severe sargassum crisis since 2011. This crisis, driven by climate change and ocean eutrophication, has inundated coastlines, causing significant ecological, economic, and health impacts. The urgency of this issue cannot be overstated, as these sargassum blooms disrupt marine ecosystems, damage fisheries, and deter tourists, leading to substantial financial losses. Additionally, the decaying seaweed releases toxic gases, posing health risks to coastal communities. Despite efforts to manage and repurpose sargassum, the unpredictable nature of these blooms continues to challenge the resilience and sustainability of the Caribbean SIDS. Sargassum, often seen as a problem, can be transformed into a solution. It can be converted into electricity through several methods, primarily focusing on its use as a biofuel. These methods not only provide a renewable energy source, but also help mitigate the environmental impact of sargassum blooms by repurposing the seaweed, turning a crisis into an opportunity. Therefore, the Dominican Republic urgently requests the Council's support to instruct the pertinent departments of the agency to introduce this critical topic for discussion on the relevant agency forums. This could be done in the upcoming Council meetings and/or the upcoming 15th Assembly. We also seek the agency's assistance in providing up-to-date information on the current state of technology and best practices to use sargassum as a renewable energy source. Thank you.
Thank you. Now the floor for St. Lucia.
Thank you. Firstly, let me thank IRENA and the SIDS Lighthouse for the significant work that has been done and has been presented here today. St. Lucia would like to join its voice with the request of Mauritius. The particularities of SIDS means that our scarce land resource is in competition for living space, for agriculture, and for many diverse uses. when we look at renewable energy, especially solar energy, which is one of the most abundant resources that we have, it takes up a lot of land space. So the call for this type of support on offshore wind exploration is one that we would like to support very heavily, and it is one that is also featured in our National Energy Policy 2023-2030. So we would really be interested in any support that IRENA can provide for a lot of the reasons that Mauritius has already outlined. Thank you.
Thank you. Now the floor for Papua New Guinea, followed by the UK.
Thank you. I thank the chair plus IRENA and SIDS for, IRENA and the Lighthouse for the great work and the good work you've done so far in supporting the small island development states. Papua New Guinea would like to take cue with other SIDS members. We have what's common to us is the land and sea, but our challenges are unique. We have different challenges. For example, you look at most of the small island states, they sort of depend mostly on solar, but the waste management strategies for solar, the battery is a challenge because it will eventually, we pose a risk of destroying some of our pristine water and our environment. So these are some of the challenges we have. I would like to also point out that in PNG we have, when it comes to the acceleration of tripling the renewable, we don't have an issue of the indigenous sources of generation. However, our challenges remain in the space of financing, especially in the sunk cost. You look at geothermal, for example, we have reconnaissance in most of the areas of our country. We are located along the Pacific Ring of Fire. We have enough geothermal sources, but the sunk cost in the exploration has always been a challenge for us to explore those options. The same could be said for other generation sources as well. And I guess I would like to take cue with what other distinguished speakers have already mentioned. If we could have if I could request the IRENA to have a country-specific sort of a specific strategy, so to speak, that identifies the challenges, the funding that will be required, plus the technology. We are endowed with so much, the ocean. We are surrounded by the ocean, and the technologies that will help us in that space will be useful in our renewable pursuit. Thank you.
Thank you. Now the floor for the United Kingdom.
Thank you, Chair. On behalf of the UK, I'd just like to thank IRENA for bringing this session today to the Council meeting. This is a critically important subject for SIDS nations who, as we've seen and discussed, account for less than 1% of global emissions, yet are home to some of the most vulnerable populations facing unique challenges in their clean energy transition and access to modern and affordable energy. It is clear that the uptake of renewables will not be uniform across the globe, and renewable energy deployment must be tailored to national circumstances. As of 2021, 28% of the SIDS total population have no access to electricity. Almost half of the SIDS population, which is over 28 million people, have no access to clean cooking fuels, which, as we've heard, disproportionately impacts women and girls. For SIDS in particular, we recognize that they face significant barriers related to accessing finance across the areas of cost of capital, market readiness, and upskilling of reskilling of workforces, which deters private investment in projects and companies at the necessary scale. This has meant, of course, that they are heavily reliant on fossil fuel imports for energy needs. But these barriers can be overcome. SIDS have abundant yet untapped renewable energy potential, from solar to wind to hydropower, and small-scale and decentralized renewable energy projects can provide the pathways to a low-carbon energy system. However, access to finance must be addressed. And this is an area which requires reform, but governments cannot do this alone. We must work with MDBs, the private sector, and philanthropies to deliver better access to finance. The UK has a strong and long-term commitment to supporting just and inclusive transitions globally. Since 2016, our flagship 265 million Transforming Energy Access programme has already helped innovative businesses deliver clean energy access to more than 27 million people and leverage over 1.5 billion in further investment. What is more, to support SIDS nations, we have also committed 19.35 million to increase renewable energy efficiency measures and improve energy security in 6 Eastern Caribbean countries. This is alongside 19.9 million to our Pacific Clean Energy Programme, which improves access to affordable clean energy among Pacific Island countries. Thank you once again for hosting this really important conversation, and I look forward to hearing further enriched discussions on how we as the international community can accelerate a just and inclusive clean energy transition that ensures that no one is left behind.
Thank you. If there is no further comments, may I now give the floor to the Director General to address the issues raised and provide overall reflections.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will comment on a few, and then I will leave, with your permission, the floor to Kurbus to conclude on this. I can pick on the comment made by the Tonga ambassador concerning trying to find a way to write something that could be easily read and understood by ministers. I think this could be done, but I kindly ask you also to be in contact with Kurbus to give the specific suggestions that we can capture in time for the General Assembly. Concerning Mauricio Santa Lucia, perhaps we should better focus the kind of assistance that you have requested, but as far as I understood, it concerns project. We have here the division, we have Ahmedabad that is dealing with the project, Kurbus that's dealing with the partnership. Please connect with them directly so that we can have a real understanding on what should be done. Naturally, the Secretariat is ready to do anything that is in his capacity to support you. But try to be a little bit clearer, and perhaps this could be done more easily in bilateral with my people. Okay, so in principle, we are ready to support your country. I've been supporting your country when I was working in Italy, also Santa Lucia. So I'll be quite happy if I can do for something that's a secretariat for you today. On PNG comments concerning strategy, I think the support on building the strategy, I think that the NDC could be the right occasion to build something on term of strategy. So please connect with Kurbus, and we try to see how we can support your country on the NDCs. As you have noticed, we have received from the UE resources for support 20 countries. I'm sure that we'll receive also other money. We have already received something from Denmark. So I'm quite sure that we can support you completely. So try to agree with the details of this work towards February last year, when the NDC should be presented, or also perhaps later, but inevitably before the COP 30. These are my brief reply on what I have heard, but I don't know if Gurbus thinks that we can add something.
Thank you very much, Director General. Just a couple of points. First of all, Abbas is our now new guiding document. I think these outcomes are a clear reflection of SIDS needs and priorities. And it's a good thing that Lighthouse's priorities are a very good match with that, and we will continue working on several different dimensions of Abbas implementation. On the policy side, on the technology side, innovation technology that you highlighted, on the finance side, and we'll try to adjust our work accordingly. The important dimension is, I think you have also highlighted, is the monitoring and evaluation framework. I think, and Antigua Barbuda being the first pilot, among the first pilot countries to implement it. I think that will give us a very good feedback also how this can be rolled out under the Abbas structure, the broader number of an entire SIDS framework, and to see how this implementation and to see clearly how the impact is out of this all this work being done by different partners under Lighthouses and beyond. Center of Excellence is on top of our agenda, and we will be very much looking to the further explore and how IRENA and Lighthouse Initiative can support it. And you highlighted these three different dimensions of it. I think for each and every dimension, I think IRENA has expertise to offer, and we'll be happy to look into more concretely how this cooperation can take place. On the question, pool procurement, in fact, from Mauritius, in fact, that is something I think I also referred to it in my presentation. In fact, we have been discussing in the Caribbean with the Caribbean Center of Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency and several other partners, because this issue has been raised before in different regions, and whether this cross-territorial pool procurement can take place, where you rightly say the costs, it will have a very positive impact on the costing of projects. Obviously, I mean, there are very good examples across the globe, but not many cross-territorial pool procurement, because then you have to really comply with different jurisdictions in different territories. But this can be done, but this needs to be discussed further and how we can pull it off in multi-country context, multi-project context, and whether this can be brought under one envelope and to be able to work on that. We have had already facilitated some discussions with some of the partners who have experience on that, and we'll be happy to further discuss it with you also in the Mauritius context and the region, that whether this can be something that we can work together. On PNG, just to complement what Director General already highlighted, the NDC context, but there is also an RA process we have initiated with PNG. I think this RA and NDC discussion will be combined, and we'll be looking to the different dimensions of the challenges and opportunities in the country to be able to come up with short to medium term recommendations on how we can improve the environment to enable the faster pace of renewable energy deployment in the country, but also looking into how we can also improve the excess rate, which needs to be addressed. I think it's one of the priorities of the government to increase the access rate, and we'll be happy to look into that dimension also. And finally, I would like to thank also to Denmark and US for their support for our SIDS work. For a long time, we have been working with Denmark, and we are hoping that we continue extending our joint support to SIDS in the coming period. Thank you.
Thank you, Director General and Mr. Gonul. So the council takes note of all the interventions made on this item. So this concludes our consideration on agenda item 7. Distinguished colleagues, we have reached the end of our morning session. When we resume at 2:30, we will continue with our agenda. Now at this moment, the Secretariat has an announcement to make.
Thank you, Chair. Yesterday, a very valuable item was found in plenary, and the owner can approach the hotel lost and found desk to get it back. Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to inform delegates that lunch for all the in-person delegates will be served at Flavors Restaurant on the first floor. Thank you. We expect you will return at 2:30.
Recording stopped.